welcome to Cookery with Mason Storm. In this video we'll be cooking up a turkey and carving it. Now this is just the way that I do it. I learned at a restaurant and they specialize in catering and their turkey was really good. So breast side up, fill 2/3 of the way with water. If it's frozen you might want a little bit less water because the bird can let out a lot of juice when it kind of thaws. And I totally recommend cooking right from frozen, doesn't matter. Scoop of onion soup mix and then cover with foil and into the oven. Low temperature, long cook time. A lot of the time we would even cook them for 12 hours at like 300 degrees. Now the goal isn't just to have it so that it's a safe bird to eat. We cook it so it's well done because the meat separates a lot easier from the bone when the bird is cooked longer. If you're gonna ask the question, am I gonna do stuffing? The answer is yes. Now the reason why I added all that water to the bird is that I use it after it's done cooking to make stuffing, to make soup, to make gravy. The drippings, especially when you add a lot of water like this and kind of cook it all down while making the bird, is fantastic for making all kinds of different things. It's quite great, and learning about this has really changed things for me. It's the way my family used to do it. We would manually stuff the bird and you'd have to pull it out, make sure there was no bones in it, and it really was quite a hassle, but now we don't. Now as far as telling when the bird is done, I use the one hand pull on the breast technique, and the way that I can tell is that if I pull and it separates from the ribs really easily, just kind of falls apart, then I know it's done. The other way to do it is to kind of pull on the leg of the bird, and if it just kind of falls apart, then it's also really well done. Now over here, this is just the bird right out of the oven, and after seeing that it's done enough, I just dump the water through a strainer into a vessel that I will then set aside and let cool off. Once your bird's all drained off, set it back on the stove or whatever and let it cool off. So the bird's still warm, it's just not hot anymore. And start with the breast, kind of clean off all the little fatty bits and skinny bits that are kind of loose and flaky, and then cut it into slices. Take your time on the slices, let the blade do the cutting, because if you go too aggressively, or if your knife's a little bit on the dull side, it just kind of flakes away and like turkey crumble, and that's not really what you want. You want to have nice, neat slices. And depending on how much you let it cool off will really determine how easy it is to do the cutting. My setup here, I have my trash can, I have my bone pot, and I got my meat completion pile. Now the way to do the breasts, you kind of do them kitty corner to each other, and then meat in the corners, but here I'm just taking apart the neck, just separating all the meat from it. Some of the meat on the neck is some of the best in the bird, and I'm quite a big fan of it. I know some people get kind of weird about turkey neck, and if they are, I mean, you can use it to make your gravy too. That's the way my grandma used to always make it. She would add water to the turkey neck and kind of cook it on the stove and make gravy out of it that way. But I happen to really like the turkey neck. Once I tried it, I thought it was amazing, so that's kind of how I've been doing it. Now the legs, the big thing to notice with them is that they have lots of little tiny tendons in them, so you have to kind of spread it outwards and then separate the tendons from the meat, and it comes out in a lot of little tiny spots, and just put them in your completion pile of meat when you kind of get them separated. And that's part of the reason why you want to cook the turkey a long time, is because if the turkey's not cooked as long, the tendons really stick to the meat and it can be a real pain to separate them. But when the turkey's well done, they come apart far easier. That's probably one of the most important parts as far as the dark meat goes, is getting those little things out of there. The sense of touch in the fingers is probably one of the most important things needed when carving the turkey. The breast and the legs are a little bit of exceptions because of the tendons in the legs and just kind of the shape of the breast and the way that it's sliced to get nice turkey slices. But the rest of the meat, it's simply a matter of If it feels like skin or fattiness that you wouldn't really want to eat when you touch it, you know, you kind of discard that. And if it's a bone, you throw it in your bone pile. As far as the meat goes, if it's dark in color, it goes in one pile, and if it's light in color, it goes in another. There's a lot of nuance when it comes to the darker meat and different sections that it comes from. But when you're carving a turkey for your family or friends or some social gathering, Thanksgiving, whatever, it's not like every piece has to be named, and it doesn't need to be separated and filtered to a very high degree. It's dark meat and it's light meat. Those are the two main concerns. I mean, you can have families where they want to fight over the Pope's nose, which is a real fatty piece of, well, I don't even know if you can even call it meat, but it's really fatty, and I typically discard it because no one in my family really cares for it. But there are people that really appreciate it, and that's really what they're into. There's certain parts of the dark meat that I also really like. There's a little section near the hip that I always find quite good, very tender. A lot of the dark meat, it also comes off in really small pieces depending on where it is on the bird, so try to keep your chunks as big as you can, but a lot of the dark meat is going to be small, and you just have to try to get as much of it as you can. One technique you can do is you kind of carve the bird, and then you have your pile where you have all the fat and whatever, and if you go through that a second time, you might be able to get even more meat out of it. And that's how you can get a better extraction rate at the carving process to get the most out of the bird. I'm just going to fast forward through a lot of this footage of the carving of the bird. In real time, it takes me just over half an hour to carve a bird. Now, carving cold turkey makes it a lot easier on your fingers, and if you were to even carve it while it's hot, it'll be hot at the start, but by the time you're done, after 30 minutes or maybe even longer, the turkey's going to be cold anyway. The real trick to having a good turkey dinner with nice hot turkey is the gravy. The way that you do it is you have scorching hot gravy, and when that's poured on the meat, it reheats the meat. Because the density of the meat, it doesn't really hold heat for very long. If you took some turkey, you put it in the microwave for a couple minutes, and you take it out of the microwave, you leave it a couple more minutes, it'll already be cold. Whereas like if you had a potato in the microwave and you heated it up and then left it outside of the microwave, it holds the heat a lot longer. Turkey meat in general doesn't hold heat for very long, and having a big panic on carving your turkey and doing it right before you're ready to eat, or even doing it while you're eating, may sound good, but it does not provide the best turkey consumption experience. It's also a good idea that when you cook your meat, that you allow for appropriate time for the meat to rest before you kind of do anything with it. I find this really helps with the texture of the meat quality. More so with steaks than turkeys, but it applies to all meats. Just having a little bit of time to let the meat rest and kind of cool off a little bit, or to kind of settle. The other aspect of this too, with the doing your turkey kind of before and carving it earlier, is that, well, from a logistical standpoint, it really gets rid of a lot of the panic. I know at my family's extended family, Christmas parties, sometimes we've had it where it's like, well, is the turkey ready? And it's like, no, and then before you know it, it's 9 o'clock at night and we're just starting to eat. And by the time the turkey's all carved, it's cold anyway, so it just kind of defeats the entire purpose of it. So doing your turkey earlier, doing it overnight, getting everything ready beforehand is one way that you can make it so that stuff actually happens when it's supposed to. It's nothing worse than having 30 hungry people waiting for this bird to be done with no idea like just how far along it is. Especially if you're not well done cooking your turkey, then it's incredibly difficult to separate the meat, and it just detracts from the experience. It's probably why some things like turkey loaf are so popular, but I think that a turkey loaf is an inferior product than an actual turkey. The other thing to note is that this process, this kind of cooking it long and slow and then kind of preheating your meat with your gravy to kind of reheat it. Works with all different types of birds. So I've done it with duck as well, and would like to try it with goose sometime, but haven't had an opportunity to have that. So the technique does work. I would really like to try some goose gravy sometime. It just sounds awesome. Well, that's probably enough turkey talk for one day. So, till next time, stay awesome. And feel free to like, comment, and subscribe.